Okay. And so I'll go ahead and introduce you and then I'll turn it over. Dr. Seungki Lee is an ag economist who joined AEDE in 2021. His areas of expertise include ag economics, environmental resources economics, and industrial organization. His research currently focuses on research and development activities and the impact of new technologies in the ag sector. And I asked him to talk about bio versus renewable diesel and corn ethanol and how this shift in energy does impact the ag sector as well as the energy sector. So Seungki, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dan, for the nice introduction, and thanks for having me. Nice to meet you all. I'm Seungki Lee, and today I'm going to talk about biodiesel, renewable diesel, and corn ethanol in terms of the market aspects, because I'm an economist. So probably this is some of very, very famous quote that some of you already have seen before. So about 100 years ago, in the interview with New York Times, Henry Ford mentioned the possibility of biofuel already. So he said there is a fuel in every bit of vegetable matter that can be fermented. And now in 21st century, it became real. So in this presentation, I will talk about basic concepts of biofuel products and their market conditions and market prospects. So, and as a disclaimer, I'm an economist, not a bioengineer. So I'm not gonna go into chemical features of biofuels. Instead, I will focus on the product characteristics of major biofuel products from a point of view of consumers. So let's first check what is biofuel. And as the title said, I will focus on the three commercialized biofuel products: corn ethanol, biodiesel, and renewable diesel. So first, corn ethanol is the biggest biofuel market now. Currently, 82% of total biofuel is corn ethanol, and it is mainly used by blending it in gasoline to produce E10, E15, or E85. And the number indicates the portion of corn ethanol in the biofuel. And biodiesel, this is the second most widely produced biofuel, actually the most common biofuel in Europe as well. And this is obtained by transesterification process. This is kind of chemical reaction of oils and fats. And and this is typically blended with petroleum diesel in the range between 5 to 20%. And lastly, the renewable diesel is sometimes called second generation biodiesel or green diesel, or even sometimes hydrotreated vegetable oil, HVO. And it is relatively new to the market. And the most appealing feature of it is that renewable diesel is interchangeable with petroleum diesel. So in theory, it can be used up to 100% concentration in diesel engines. This is a figure summarizing the production process of corn ethanol. So I know this is a little bit small, but the left one is the biodiesel and the right one is renewable diesel. And so the left one is corn ethanol and right one is the biodiesel and renewable diesel. So let's talk about the left part first. So in the ethanol production, as mentioned before, it is typically blended in gasoline either by 10% or 85% in this figure. So for E10 and E85 respectively. And of course, crops other than corn can be used as input for ethanol. Globally, coarse grains, mostly corn, take up 54% of ethanol source crops, and sugar crops take about 22%. So those are taking the majority. And this right part is about biodiesel and renewable diesel production process. So soybean oil and other vegetable oils are the main source for biodiesel and renewable diesel. And as mentioned before, biodiesel can be mixed with conventional diesel up to 20%, and renewable diesel can be used with 100% concentration rate. Given the progress in biofuels, it may be important to understand what this change implies to the commodity markets. Although renewable diesel and biodiesel do not have long history records, but corn ethanol can be analyzed using historical data because it has a relatively long history. In a recent study by Lark and his colleagues, which was published last year in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, the research team revealed that corn price went up by 30%, and the prices of other crops like soybean and wheat went up by about 20% as a result of renewable fuel standard. This means certainly this biofuel push gives some additional support for commodity markets. And when you look at this graph, the solid line is what we actually observe in the market historically, and this dotted line is indicating some counterfactor scenario in case that there had not been the biofuel market existed before. So certainly we can see a larger gap between these two different scenarios. And probably the punchline is the biofuel is likely to reinforce the linkage between energy market and agricultural market. So now let's check the biofuel supply in Ohio and in the US. In Ohio, most biofuel stations are E85, amounting to 206 public stations. However, we only have one biodiesel station and no renewable diesel station now. Of course, these statistics only count heavily biofuel concentrated stations such as B20 or E85. So we have to take the numbers with a grain of salt, but because low biofuel concentrated gas stations are not reflected here. The right map is showing the geographic distribution of the biofuel stations. And when you look at the national statistics, that is also somewhat similar to Ohio. One thing I want to point out is the number of renewable diesel stations. In fact, among 573 stations, 571 stations are located in California, and the other two are located in Oregon. So the renewable diesel stations are really nowadays just existing in California and a little bit in Oregon. So that's it. But considering that California is typically very progressive in adopting green energy sources, the market potential of renewable diesel seems pretty promising. This is the renewable diesel plant construction map. So it has a high hope when looking at the plant construction progress. The map is showing that many renewable diesel fuel plants are underway across states. Giving a little bit of background about the SAF, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel, it is a biofuel that are completely interchangeable with conventional jet fuels. So currently, the only mature drop-in biofuel for sustainable aviation fuel is a specific type of renewable diesel. So according to the American Society of Testing and Materials, ASTM, blending up to 50% of the specific fuel into regular jet fuel is safe. So I think the policy support and technological support will be the deciding factor of this emerging market. And here's the biofuel production capacity trend. The production capacity trend is intended to measure the estimated gallons of fuel alcohol that a plant is capable of producing over a year. So both in Ohio and in US, ethanol production capacity has gone up during the last couple of years, except for the last year. And I just say last year's slight drop was the consequence of high input cost and economic downturn concerns. Biodiesel and renewable diesel are really in their emerging stages, and they are likely to increase, but uncertainty exists certainly. So we need to keep an eye on them. Here's the the corn ethanol production capacity. So corn ethanol is heavily concentrated in Midwest when looking at the geographic distribution of production capacity, and Ohio is actually the top 7 state in its ethanol production capacity. And Iowa is the number 1, and Nebraska is the number 2 in terms of their production capacity now. In the case of biodiesel, Iowa has still like the top place in the production capacity like ethanol, but Ohio is not listed in top 13. So Ohio is basically included in the rest of US category in this figure. And compared to corn ethanol, this biodiesel case, production capacity is more like geographically distributed, I would say, because we can see now some of the western coast states and Texas, Arkansas are also like kind of taking some top places in terms of their production capacity. And in the renewable diesel production capacity, we see a whole different picture. And of course, it's very, very emerging stage. So that's why it's very, I think, too early to say something about the concrete picture of the production capacity. But at least at this point, the capacity says, as we can see, Louisiana has the top production capacity, and Wyoming and California follow. And of course, up to the progress of renewable diesel market, this can dramatically change moving forward. So far, we have looked over the current biofuel market conditions, and now let's think about the market prospects. And although it is, of course, impossible to precisely predict the future market, but sometimes predictions can provide good insights on the key factors to pay attention. So in this graph, we can see the gasoline consumption projection. And this report was released last year, but the analysis was done with up to 2021 data. So it doesn't take into account the war in Ukraine and some other like issues that happened last year. As I marked in the figure by the blue dot, the 2022 actual gas consumption was significantly lower than what ERS predicted in this report. So I think this was mainly because of the macroeconomic conditions, including the energy shortage, the war in Ukraine, and globally warm winter as well. And typically, the pessimistic scenarios are plotted with low economic growth or high oil price, which supports my explanation too. And considering that corn ethanol is blended in gasoline, the biofuel market will likely follow a similar pattern. So let's check it. Here is the ethanol consumption projection. And as expected, the ethanol market is highly dependent on the gasoline market situation. I would say positively correlated with gasoline market volume. Specifically, the white circle, high oil and gas supply, is always above the reference black line, and the brown triangle, low oil and gas supply, is always below the reference line. So it's kind of explaining and supporting that the claim I made. Okay, and in the longer term, the biggest challenge to the biofuel market will be the electric energy. So as shown in the projection, the electric vehicle EVs expansion is a simple matter of time. All the scenarios are predicting a continuous and somewhat rapid increase in the electric share, and this comparative advantages of biofuel will be necessary to keep the biofuel market sustainable in the future. Otherwise, maybe with a little bit of like short-term like boom in the biofuel market, then it can be actually replaced by the electric power market. So that's something I want to highlight. And next, this is kind of the closing slide. To sum up, I would like to emphasize the coexistence of opportunities and challenges. The green movement and biofuels, like carbon saving effect, will support this market, and the high substitutability between renewable diesel and conventional diesel is another promising aspect of this market now. However, the green movement typically favors electric energy over alternative fuel energy. So the competition with electronic energy will be a major challenge, as I said. Also, high substitutability can be a double-edged sword because interchangeability implies sensitivity to the connected market. That means in the emerging stage of the market, the renewable diesel industry will be even more dependent on the diesel market situation, which can be a tricky risk. Then do I have a little more minutes?
Yes, yeah, you got plenty of time.
Oh, really? Okay. Then let me talk a little more about the global aspects as well. This is kind of the appendix that I prepared as well. So this is the global biofuel demand projection, which was reported in OECD report. And this team is actually kind of predicted how much percentage change in terms of the biodiesel demand and diesel demand or gasoline demand change during the next decade. So when you look at the blue circle, the circle size is implying the capacity or the size of the demand, and this coordinates are indicating the percentage change. And as you can see, for instance, in the case of US, the blue dot in the left figure, ethanol will change about like 5 to 10% increase during the next decade, and there will not be or very small change increase in the gasoline demand. So that's kind of the projection made by OECD for the US. And without surprise, when you look at the European Union, they are like pretty much like reducing the gasoline consumption, but still like they are likely to increase the change in the ethanol demand. And some of them, like Brazil and China, they are all kind of expected to increase the gasoline demand and ethanol demand during the next 10 years. And this 45-degree line is actually indicating what will be the role of the ethanol demand within this gasoline demand. So if any countries placed above this 45-degree line, that means these countries will likely increase the ethanol share within the gasoline consumption, and some countries placed lower than this 45-degree line, that means this country will likely to reduce the ethanol share in terms of their gasoline consumption. It looks like most of the major countries are likely to increase their ethanol share during the next 10 years. And when you look at the biodiesel graph, which is kind of having the same structure as before, as ethanol one, but now the y-axis is the change in biodiesel demand percentage. And in the case of US, diesel demand is likely to decrease, but biodiesel is likely to slightly increase. So that is what OECD expects for the US. And in the case of European Union, they are expected to decrease the diesel demand and even decrease the biodiesel as well. So, so that's the EU's market prospects. And in the case of Brazil, they are expected to increase the diesel demand, but also decrease the portion of biodiesel within this diesel demand. And Argentina is, I think, the country that is likely to increase the biodiesel share, but also increase the diesel demand as well. So it's kind of placed above the 45-degree line in this case. But they don't have a big capacity. But when you look at the Indonesia, they actually have very promising market potential, mainly because of their population increase. So they are likely to increase the diesel as well as the biodiesel. So that is the biofuel demand projection. And here is the development of ethanol consumption projection that was reported in the same report by OECD. And as you can see, US is kind of somewhat stable, like ethanol demand as expected based on their projection model. And when you look at the graph, probably something that is likely increases a little bit of in Brazil, I think, and also some parts in India might be the countries that pushing up the global demand for this ethanol consumption in the next 10 years. And here is the development of world biodiesel consumption. And based on their projection, US is likely to like continuously decrease after 2005 in terms of their biodiesel consumption, and Indonesia will likely to kind of the main like country increasing the world biodiesel consumption in next 10 years. That's what they are expecting. So I think that's all I prepared. So let me stop sharing the screen. Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Hey, thank you, Seungki. Yeah, open up to questions. I'm sure you'll have plenty. Very nice presentation. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and start. Seungki, I guess you had in a slide that one of the major competitors for renewable diesel, I'm not sure if you included biodiesel in that or not, but the electric vehicles was going to be a major competitor for biofuels. Now, I'm wondering if with the electric vehicles, I can see that being more of playing a bigger role in personal transportation. But as far as like ag equipment and truck shipments, it sounds to me like that would be more of a role for the biodiesel. Do you see that happening in the future?
Likely. So and I think still like I'm taking a little bit of conservative view. So probably there should be pretty strong like demand for biodiesel at least for the next 10 years. But still, like considering this, the kind of how these technological advancements are pushed by like many like policy makers and industry leaders, it might be, who knows, like this technology changes so fast nowadays. And if the EV is kind of getting more and more powerful and competitive, like and comparable to the diesel powered tractors and other like large equipments, then probably the biofuel market will like lose the market share pretty like in a pretty fast pace, I would say. So that's why that is somewhat like we have to like keep in mind. So because the problem is like the big motivation and support made for this biodiesel and biofuel market was basically kind of some environmental motivation, and the policymakers and even like just general public are like a little more favorable to the electronic powers. So that is kind of okay. Then is it maybe people can easily perceive that, oh, this might be a little more dominant and attractive energy source to consume. If that is marketed, then biofuel market can face a big challenge, even though people will believe this is a good middle step to jump into the electronic era. But still that is middle step, and then we should question, oh, is it sustainable, or it can phase out at the end of this transition stage. So yeah.
And I guess just one quick follow-up, Seungki. You mentioned so are the current diesel engines pretty much equipped for renewable diesel, or is there like a lot of modifications that need to happen for that?
I think technically it is interchangeable. So but probably just people like having some like reservation because of they don't have enough data or experience of this is really working without any side effects.
Okay.
So yeah, so at least based on the reported like analysis and research saying that, oh, it's interchangeable. So in theory, it should be just used, but probably like the perception and like, consumers like attitudes does not change that fast. So that's kind of another like different issue.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
I've got one. So I guess one narrative I've heard is that the oil industry favors renewable diesel, possibly over ethanol. Because presumably they have more control over renewable diesel versus ethanol. So if you're producing gasoline, maybe you're sort of competing against ethanol. It's being produced somewhere else, and you don't have, if you're manufacturing, you're kind of competing with somebody else for that, right? But with renewable diesel, the oil companies actually have some control over that manufacturing of the renewable diesel, and they can kind of do it at their and blend it right into their refineries of kind of diesel petroleum. Does that sound consistent with what you've seen or read?
Yeah, I think that is a reasonable like expectation and claim, because I think this is a double-edged sword that I mentioned. So first is kind of having high substitutability, so it can be like directly replace the existing diesel, like conventional diesel products. So in that sense, renewable diesel is very, very attractive and have very high hope in that sense. But at the same time, this is kind of jumping into a larger market. So probably some of very competitive biodiesel like products can anyway compete with this biofuel market. So if the diesel market itself is kind of facing some like very big challenge, then the renewable diesel will also directly get this impact pretty like heavily, although that is kind of some like side effect of it, but certainly it will have a higher control over this diesel production, because it is not just blending, because it can simply just can be used. So in that sense, I think what they are understanding and expecting is pretty reasonable, and I agree with that.
Do you see any way Ohio, like, I mean, I guess from what I can tell, when we talk biodiesel, renewable diesel, a lot of that manufacturing, your one slide showed Louisiana as really kind of dominant geography for that. Is there any reason manufacturing would happen in Ohio over some of those other places?
Well, I think it depends on like what kinds of like policy support can be made. One of the reason that like Louisiana could like take this like top producing capacity or top producer for this renewable diesel was their like strong policy support, and the state governor and I think the state house really supported a lot to invite this renewable diesel like production companies and like kind of encourage this like plant constructions. So those kind of like maybe like tax support and some other like benefits was the main reason, and of course some geographic advantage of Louisiana as well. But probably if Ohio is taking that kinds of like very active actions, still like we have some chance, because it's still emerging market, and not even though like when you look at the share itself, it looks like Louisiana is very, very large, but it's still like not established, because all other like states are also like kind of taking this like plant construction opportunities and try to make this industry like larger within their states. So if we jump into this competition, then still like we have some chance to get a decent size of production capacity in Ohio, I believe.
Wouldn't that be somewhat coordinated with where it gets mixed? I mean, Louisiana's oil country, right? So
Yeah.
So Seungki, do you think soybean prices will go up along? So the model that you have with the ethanol example, right? Ethanol caused corn prices to go up, but it caused everything else to go up. So you think if renewable diesel starts coming online and it becomes very attractive, not only soybean prices will go up, but corn and wheat will go up as well?
Yeah, I think so. I don't like to say the trickle down effect, but this certainly that exists for when it comes to this, like I prefer to say chain effect. So if one commodity price is getting a strong support in terms of their demand, and then its price goes up, then eventually other commodity prices are like highly correlated. So others can also get some like price support, because anyway, farmers will switch to planting this like more like attractive crops. Then basically the production of other crops are lower and higher prices will be realized. So eventually all the commodity prices look like going up together.
Yeah, that was interesting. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, other questions?
there's a comment in the chat from Christine,
Oh yeah.
Dan.
Okay, yeah, Christine did put a comment in here. She said, I don't think people will have any idea how many things in their houses got there because of diesel engines, talking about the importance of diesel in the economic sector. And that's why I was asking about, the biodiesel maybe taking a role in that instance, as opposed to the electric cars.
Right.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just wanted to thank you for your time. This is extremely interesting and will be, I don't, entertaining is not the right word, thrilling to watch as it changes in the future and how the market ebbs and flows with supply and demand. Like we keep saying in our group, we need a diverse energy portfolio, right? All of these energy sources and fuels have their place. No one is the silver bullet. So the more options we have, the better, as long as they can stay competitive in the market somehow.
Agree. And actually I'm happy to entertain.
We hear that, we have to have him back then.
Thank you again, Seungki.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for having me.